Good afternoon. How are you doing? Good?
Had a good lunch? Everyone had good lunch?
Yeah. So, welcome you to NAV TechDays, our session. Today we will speak about integrations, about data synchronizations, about tools that we can apply in this process. And yeah, so my name is Dmitry. I am an MVP of mostly, return me please. Yeah. So I'm an MVP. I have about 15 years in NAV experience. I also focus now on some AI stuff. I also will have a session about AI tomorrow, so you're also welcomed. Spoiler. Yeah. So I live in St. Petersburg, which is in Russia, not in Florida. And I have 2 kids. And welcome, Tharanga.
Hello everyone, I'm Tharanga Chandrasekara. I'm MVP for past 4 years for Business Central. And I have 7 years of experience in NAV and 2 years of experience in PC. I live in Auckland, New Zealand, like the edge of the world, but I'm actually from Sri Lanka, and I flew like 32 hours to get here, so let's see.
Well, please give his guy a good applause that he traveled 90,000 kilometers to share the knowledge with you.
Yeah. So going to the session, this is our agenda for today. First, we are going to talk about reactive programming, a little bit about theory, and then Dmitry is going to talk about admin API, which is a now new cool feature in Business Central, and he's going to show a little bit on that and cool demos. Then we talk about the event grid, and then we jump into the hands-on. After the hands-on, we will talk about design considerations, and finally the takeaways. So going back to this slide, the most common integration problem. If I ask the question from the people, most of them tell me that the main issue is keeping system in sync. You can integrate applications, but keeping them in sync is the most common problem. In the past, we didn't have this problem much. The reason is most of the applications were huge applications, and all the functionalities that needed for the business was built within that app. But now, with the new way of patterns and thinking, people decided, okay, we are now going to split the application and put it into separate applications, and then we can give the better experience for the user. With coming to this approach, now we run into a problem with how we can synchronize these applications together. So, because in the organization, you need data flow across the entire organization. So, people come up with different technologies, different terminologies, and different patterns. These are the 2 main patterns that actually people use. One is polling and push. So what's polling? Polling means that if I'm the main application, think that I'm the main application which is BC, and then I'm saying I have the data set. If you need that data set, just come to me and tell me what you need, then I will give you the data set to you. Which is perfect. So I'm the BC, some application comes to me and asks, can I get the customer information? So I said, yes, I can get the customer information. What are the customer numbers? So he gives me the data, I give it back. Perfect, working fine. Then the other option is push. What in push is, it says, I have the data set, please don't come to me, you're annoying me so much, coming all the time to me and asking the data set. I will come to your doorstep, I will deliver the data set to you. This is also a really nice pattern. But if you talk about the polling more, you will get into more, these are the issues that with the polling. One is consistency. Think about a scenario that there are 2 applications running, and the sync interval is 30 minutes. That means at any given point of time, your application will be 30 minutes out of sync with the other application. So in order to minimize that, what we can do is we can minimize the time frame, that how much time that this application get synchronized. So we move it 30 minutes to 1 minute now. Fine. Now the gap is 1 minute. But the problem is, every 1 minute, we get this knock as a main application, do you have data? And in another minute, do you have data? So it keep on creating noise in the main application. And it's asking, keep saying the question. Sometimes it says, yes, I have data. Most of the time it says, no, I don't have any data. Please do not come to me. But still keep on asking the same thing, question. So,
are you stupid? Yeah, I don't have that.
Yes. If you're familiar with Big Bang Theory, it's more like Sheldon coming to Penny's doorstep and like knocking all the time. So it's really annoying. This will definitely drain the resources in the main application. Because rather than it's focusing on what it does best, like servicing to the customer, now it has to request 100 different calls coming on every 1 minute, just asking data set. So it's draining resources. What are the challenges with the push? Now that main application takes the responsibility of pushing the data and keeping the other systems sync. Think of a scenario that you have Business Central as a main application, which contains the data set, and you have 5 other systems which is interested of this data set. Now, Business Central has to go on each and every 5 systems and said, this is the data set. This is the data set. It has to deliver everything.
Yeah, it's like, this is for you, this is for you,
Yes.
this is for you, please take. Oh, you are not available, take. You are not available, take.
More than that, some applications said, no, that's not the format I want. I want in a different format. I don't know what that means, so can you convert into a way that I can understand? So the Business Central, most of the time developers has to development extensions that actually convert the data set which understand by the other systems. And also, being a developer of the BC, now I have to put 5 different hats to understand what's the schema of that other system. So what's their requirement, what's their endpoint look like, and how I connect to them. I have to understand all of them. So it's becoming very complex. So main application, rather than now catering for the business need, it's catering for the integration needs.
Yeah, but also it's complex, but also it will take time because you need to go to every application and
Yes.
send the data instead of doing like a normal work.
Yeah, that's true. So that's why we thought like, okay, rather than can't we come up with a new solution with new technologies that Microsoft built? Before we jump into that, why don't you talk about like what are the real life scenarios that we have this problem in the PC level?
Yeah, for example, assume that there is a holding company. I personally worked like 10 years with one big customer who is in the marine business, and they had 3 headquarters around the world, and also I guess about 50 different legal entities with different localizations, and they had had to have one master data, one general account, one list of customers, one list of vendors, and so on, and one list of items, and we had to synchronize this data somehow. This is really complex because you have many databases, different localizations, and what we have now with the Business Central in the cloud, well, the business could be the same, right? We have a holding company and legal entities with different localizations, but the idea, just to show you the idea, is to manage everything from the holding company. So
you don't have to go like open different windows. You just do everything on the holding company itself.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, this one. So, and when you want to manage all these environments, so as an administrator, you need to create a new environment per localization, and then you should create companies. Then if we're talking about Business Central, yeah, to have the same schema, you need to publish also extensions to all these environments, so they have the same extensions. If we are talking about Business Central Cloud, you need to configure upgrade windows for all these environments. You need to manage backups somehow. Well, Microsoft manage backup, but I mean that you can have your own policy just to have a backup on your own server. And check health of all environments. So it could be complicated if you have these environments somehow disconnected. We have so-called administration API. So administration API allows you to provide you an API to manage all administration tasks remotely without going to the client, to the Business Central /admin center. And the idea for the demo I prepared, why? I thought, okay, we have a holding company. Why shouldn't we manage all the environments from this holding company? That could be a cool thing. How should we?
Demo, yes.
So I created an extension for that, which I called BC Environments Manager. Let me show first how it could work. So I'm connecting to my holding company. Yeah, of course, he forgot my password. So here, now I'm using Docker environment. So just also to show you that I can call outside the world from Docker, that's okay. So, and that's actually the list of my environments. I can update it. If I will go to the administration API, update it as well, you will see the same list. But before we go to the process, let's focus on configuration. So I have here a resource URL. That's actually the main URL for the API Business Central Dynamics.com. I have a tenant domain, so that's actually my AAD domain account. I have app ID. What's app ID? I'll show you in some seconds. And I have username and a password. So to be able to use admin API, the first thing you have to configure connection. And connection, well, actually I have an action for that, which is called test connection. Okay, that works. And to get connection, technically, you need to get a token. For preparing this demo, that was the most complicated part for me, actually, because where is it? Get the token. I'm getting it here. Because there is actually a good documentation about administration API on a Microsoft website, but to get the token, Microsoft provides you a .NET library that actually connects to the endpoint and give you the token back. But we are in extension world, no .NET. So actually, it took me, I think, 2 hours to dive into the process. I actually dived into the GitHub with the open source of these .NET libraries and just discovered the URL that it's called and the body that I need. So that's actually the answer. So I need this URL to call and the body to construct. So the grant type is actually a password here. It could be a secret key. The call could be, in this case, will be a bit more complicated. I use a password authentication for that. So this an AAD authentication using login and password. Then I pass the username, the password, and the client ID and the resource. So where to get all these things? You should go to, well, you can go to my blog as well, where I actually have a description about that. But you should go to your Azure, to AAD configuration, and here you have app registrations. So you create a new registration for your app. Let's go to this app. So when you will register your app, you will get an application ID. So that's the ID I use here, client ID. But also, you need to configure the, let me check, I think it's in the authentication. Yeah, so the type here should be public, and you should configure also redirect URI. Also, you should give this app a permissions to access Business Central. It could be read access or write access. In our case, it should be write accessible. So this, well, how much? 3 steps will give you all you need to access the endpoint and to get authentication key. So here I just use this body. Also, the content type will be application X, blah, 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 blah. I just call this client and receive a response, read from JSON, and there I will see the token. So I have this token. So this token has also the period, a valid period. So it will be, I guess, like 3, maybe 5 minutes. So I call this, I get this token every time I call admin API, actually. So next, okay, we're done with this. I have update action. So let's see how it works. So I have a code unit to get environments. So actually very simple. I have a special API request, admin version number 2. By the way, Microsoft upgraded admin API to version number 2 at the beginning of November. Now we have like more readable URL. Then applications, Business Central, and environments. With this, I will get my environments. So actually, I call web service, save the result, and providing here also the authentication token here. And yeah, I have these environments. Now I want, for example, to create environments from here. So we can also do this. So I created an action for that with a nice wizard. So I can, for example, create a production prod NZ, which will be, for example, a New Zealand localization.
That's the one.
Yeah, I can choose a type, production or sandbox. Okay, it's by default. So, once again, prod NZ. Next, finish. So now he sent me another call to admin API. You see that it will be created with the latest version, which is 15.1. But yeah, for this demo it's enough, but if you want, you can also specify the version in this wizard and send the version to the URL as well. So now you see the status is preparing. If I will update my administrational center, you will see here that's the new entry, yes, and it's also preparing. Well, maybe you can also, as I told you, you can configure sandboxes here. Maybe you want, well, you played with the sandbox and you want to delete it. Well, possible. You click on remove. Well, I created this workflow, so do you really want to delete this environment? I click yes. Are you sure? Well, to double check, okay, yes. Are you drunk? Well, well, of course, I am.
Are you?
Yeah, of course, that's how I prepare for the sessions usually. Sorry, yeah, go to sleep. Okay, let's try once again. So remove, yes, sure, yes, drunk, okay, no. Not as much. Okay, let's do it. So now it's removing. It also will take some time. If I will go here and update, you will see that this one is also removing. Let's see in the AL how it works. So, well, the simplest part is removing things. That's always very simple to do.
Yes,
just destroy that. So, for removing part, you just need a URL with this different URL request actually. So you provide the same URL as before, but with environment name. So you want to remove. And then you add this authorization with a get authentication token. So you get the token once again. And then you just call client delete URL and get some response, and you are done. When you want to create new environment, also not very complicated. So you specify here in the URL the name of the environment you want to provide, to create. Then you create a body for that. So it will be a JSON, simple JSON file with environment, country, so it will be localization, version, and environment type. So if I will go just here, so it's a simple, JSON construction that built this. And then you also specify that our body is in JSON format, and you use put, not post, but put method to call this API. So, yeah, I think that's, yeah, you can continue with the slide.
Yes. So we talk about the, no.
Yeah, so I created in environments. It's possible also to create companies. It's possible also to manage extensions there. There is another set of APIs which is called automation APIs. So they are for creation of companies, to create, to manage extensions, even to publish configuration packages and so on. So many possibilities. But yeah, now I created environment. And Tharanga, so I have now empty environment. How should I sync data there, so some master data from my holding company?
Yes. For that we can go into demo, but before that I would like to talk about a couple of slides.
Okay. I'm hurried.
So now we create all the environments within the master company. Now, what are the challenges that we have when we're trying to synchronize the data? Now he created the New Zealand one company, which is we use English, and the master company is also in New Zealand, which is English. But now he can create an environment for Russia, different language. Then he can create a different environment for different country.
I cannot create environment for Russia. So
different language. So then the people in those countries will use a different language. So how are we going to do that? Are we going to maintain different languages in the master company? How are we going to address that? And at any given point of time, there are like multiple companies interested on the information stored in the master. So how are we going to synchronize all this information into the sub-companies at once without affecting the performance of the master company? So that's another challenge that we have. And then down the line, the company owners come and said, okay, we are expanding our business. We install a new entity. Now we want to synchronize the entire data set with this new company. So should we do the project again, like taking the requirement, taking all the requirements again, do the development, deployment, UAT testing, and then after the final confirmation, deploy to production? Are we going to use that pattern, or is there a more agile way that we can address this? And also, sometimes they can come and say, okay, at the first phase, we are going to integrate these entities, these couple of entities only. And in the second phase, when everything is going smooth and we are like confident about the product and about the integration, then we will talk about the other entities. So we build the integration, deployed it, works fine. No calls in the midnight asking that this is not working. So everything is good. Then they sign off saying that, okay, we start the phase 2. Now we need these custom entities being synced with our sub-companies. So do you have to spend the entire amount of time again, or is there a more agile way to address this? So those are the challenges that we face. And there are a couple of ways to handle in BC without using any other outside technologies. One is push event into the internal table and build an API within Business Central, and then ask the subsystems to call this and take the data from there. And the other one is we have the subscriber functionality in the Business Central. So the sub-companies, they can create a subscription in the master company. So customer record changed. Subscriber functionality will call all the subscribers and said, this record's been changed in Business Central. Do you want them? And if you want them, these are the IDs for these customers. This is the URL. So the first approach, event happen in Business Central. We push it to an internal table and allow it to access through APIs. The second option is same thing, event happen in BC. This time we are not putting into internal table, we are calling subscribers and say that something changed. If you want, come and get the data set. And then they will call the APIs and query the data set. Looks fine, looks okay, but we face challenges when it's in production. Everything works fine in UAT. One is too many API requests. You have 5 different companies. Frequently, they are coming back and asking the information from the master. So too many API requests come into that, and we know that we have like 60 or 100 API calls per minute we can cater in BC. And increase of the security threat. Now we have to give our API keys to all the sub-companies if we are not going through API management in Azure. So we are sharing our keys to all the other subsystems, which is going to be a loophole in our security. The other thing is rapid growth of the database. This mainly applies for first option, which is storing the data in the internal table. We can't create a batch process. We can create a batch process, actually, to delete this data. But down the line, one system suddenly wakes up in the middle of the night and said, oh, yes, I need this data set, and it's in the master company, so I'll go back and query that. By that time, our batch job has been run, data set been cleared. So again, problems. And also the deadlocks. Number of API calls coming in. Now main system is catering for those, and people are posting journals, it creating more data, and deadlocks. The people will complain that, okay, BC is slow, it's getting deadlocks, we can't post a simple transaction, can you do something about this? So those are the couple of challenges that we face daily basis.
So many problems.
Yes. So what's the better solution would be?
You asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you.
Okay.
I'm with the problems.
Okay, you are in the trouble. So let's think what could be a solution.
Can you give us a real life sample?
Yeah, well, let's imagine that you are going to sell a house. Let's imagine that you have a house. Okay, let's imagine that you want to sell this house. So what you are doing in this case? You are going to a broker who will be responsible to find your potential customers, and well, you just describe your house. So you have a big house, I hope. So with good territory, and you just describe this house to the broker, and broker will have a list, for example, of potential customers. He will call all the customers, potential, and provide the information and ask, okay, do you want to buy this house? Do you want to buy this house? Do you want to buy this house? On the other way, this broker also has, for example, some website, which is available for everyone. So even the potential customers who is not in his list can go to this website and see your house and maybe make a decision to purchase, right? So, and this broker here is like a middle tier, right?
Yes.
So why not we have some smart middle tier here?
Less disturbance. So broker handle all the things, and you get the money, people get the house,
Yeah?
you're good to go.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Broker also will have some money, but yeah.
Yeah, small broker fee. We can live with that.
We can live with that. So we have such service in Azure, among all the Azure services, which is called Event Grid. So Event Grid, actually this is this broker. So it can, as an input, get the messages, not messages, about messages a bit later, but he can get some information about what happened in other systems, about some data, and then he can push this data to other systems which he know about, or other systems can subscribe to Event Grid also to get information about, okay, what had changed before. So there are many connectors which can send information to Event Grid, and Event Grid has many connections about other services. So he knows how to deal with the different constructions of web calls for different systems. So why not to use this Event Grid to handle this? We have a custom connection, I guess, yeah, there for which we can call for the Business Central, and then use Business Central. So we can use a holding company as the input and all the subsidiary companies as their output.
And the good thing about this is you can initiate this with the simple HTTP request. So you don't have to do like very complex calls. It's just a simple HTTP call, and
it's a simple
you
request.
can push the data into the Event Grid. And also the other thing is that you can have like multiple subscribers. So when you send the information to Event Grid, at the same time, all subscribers get light up if the filters are correct and they are like interested on that event topic. So what is an event?
So event is, well, what happened, right? So something happened. You have a new customer record, or maybe you changed something on customer record, or maybe you deleted customer record. That's what something happened. And you should send this information, so what happened, to the Event Grid. There are some mandatory fields on the header. There are topics, there are subject and event type. So what are them? So topic and the subject are something that you can manage by yourself. It's some kind of grouping the events. So, for example, a topic could be about like a Business Central. So something happened in the Business Central, and a subject could be that something happened in customers. Yeah. On the other hand, the topic could be sales, for example, just like a part of like a business area, and subject could be like a customer, or another subject could be sales order. So that's up to you how you can manage that. And event type is actually what happened. So it's if record is created, deleted, or modified, and then you have event time, so when it happened, and you have ID of this event, so of this message that were sent from Business Central, in our case, to Event Grid. Then you have a body, and the body is you construct by yourself. So it's what you need, you can construct by yourself. What happened, what fields were changed, not to pass all the customer table, for example. Just maybe you want to track only some fields like address, country, I don't know, the name of the customer or VAT number, so on. So you construct here the body, and then you just send it to Event Grid. And yeah, and then just send, and you forget about that. You don't care what happened with that after. That's the main, I think that's the main advantage of that.
Yes. So it's like a combination of push and pull. It's like main.
Yeah. It's some optimal compromise.
So these are like a couple of sample scenarios with the Event Grid, where that think that you in storage you have the file being created. So now you need to translate that. So you can push that event to the Event Grid. So Event Grid will, with the Azure functions, it picks up the file and translate it using the Azure Cognitive Services. And the automation. SQL database is being created in SQL, and now you need to run some pre-validations in the using Azure functions. So what it happens is it pushes the data set into a Event Grid. Azure function triggers that, and it runs that all the database properties are set correctly. The other thing is like virtual machine is being provisioned, so all the tags are being corrected, all the configurations are corrected. You can do all these things. Because these scenarios are put it in here because they have the inbuilt connectors, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can use those connectors and push the data into Event Grid. This is the most important part for us as a BC. We don't have a connector in the Business Central itself, so we will have to use a third party, which is the custom topics. So we create a HTTP request, we push it to Event Grid, and then after that it's the imagination that you can use logic caps, you can use flow, you can use any technology that connect with Event Grid.
So yeah, in our scenario here, like a holding company and other legal entities, so it's not like only like other legal entity, but it's another countries, another languages. So if you just assume that if you just sync data and your holding company, for example, is not in English, then well, you have data sync, but this information with this data will be not understandable for your legal entities. It will make no sense. So using this middle tier, you can also provide some additional transformations, for example, maybe about translation. Possible?
Yes, it's possible. We'll show them a demo. So hands-on. What we're going to do is we are going to integrate a couple of entities with the multiple legal entities, and we are going to use different entities, different languages. And then I'm going to show you like how much would be easy to add a new language into this integration, and also how much it would be easy to add a new entity. So before that, this is the basic structure of our demo. What we have is in this side we have the master company. Master company will push the data set into Event Grid. Then we have this logic app, which translates any data set that comes in the filter of GL account. It uses the cognitive service, get the response, and push it back to Event Grid. Then we have two logic apps running in here, which is filters for English and the GL account. So if the message is translated to English, then it will subscribe to that, take it, and push it to the sub-companies. And this one, different language, same entity, and push it to the related legal entities. So that's the main idea of the demo.
Okay, come on. Can't wait to see.
Yes. So this is our master company.
No, you.
No, I'm still in this. Yes. So this is my master company, and if I go to my New Zealand company and go to the chart of accounts, and this is my DE, different languages. I'll go to chart of account, and this is my Russian, which is in different language. So I'll open the chart of accounts for each company, just to show that we don't have any data. And I'm not expecting data for RU, because we haven't configured the language for RU yet. So in my master company, I go to chart of account. I will show the code later. Before that, I want to show you how it's been done. So I need to publish this 12 chart of accounts.
Who matters about code here? Yeah?
Sorry?
Who matters about code here? Yeah.
We built an extension to synchronize this data. So we select the chart of accounts, this 12, and then we click here. It says, do you want to synchronize? I said, yes, we need to synchronize it. It takes a couple of seconds. It says yes. If I go to this is not Azure Event Grid. This is just a viewer. That means whatever happens in Event Grid, we can see that through this. This is a webhook. So if I open this, so it's the message has been translated. Now I got the English language translated, DE. So that means the logic app I showed you previously, this logic app picks up the message, translate through the cognitive services, and push it back. So it's going through, and now if I go to New Zealand and I refresh this, I have the data set there. And if I go to this company, I have the language. I have translated. And if I go to Russia, I don't have anything. So the Russian was not supported language. Now you want to add that. Otherwise, Dmitry will...
I will be sad, yeah.
Yes. So to do that, before I do that, I would like to show the setup for this. So everyone happy that data is synchronized properly. So 12 chart of accounts we pushed, 12 of them are here. So the setup, we have 3 setups in this. The first setup we have is API endpoints. In here what we stored is we have different type of endpoints. Internally is like if you want to store the data set internally. Other one is if you want to push it to Event Grid, Azure Function, or HTTP call, it supports. And then the API endpoint we store in here, and the access keys we masked and stored in here as well. So this is the first setup that you need to have. You need to have the endpoint for the Event Grid. And the second setup is data exchange definition, which is an inbuilt functionality, but we little bit extended it. So point of using data exchange definition is if I open this, these are the messages being pushed to Event Grid. So you can see right now I'm only pushing these 4 fields. Now in the middle of the production, now we want to add a new field. So how we do it? Do you have to configure? What's your preference? Do you like to have it being configured, or do you want to deploy a new version of the extension after modifying the code? So we went with the configuration model. In here we define these are the fields that we need to push to Event Grid. Oh, not the Event Grid actually. In this point of the data exchange, it's about exporting the data set out in a JSON format. We said these are the fields that we want to export it out. And then we said in here, for the chart of account table, this is the mapping we want. So if I want to add a new field, I can simply add a new line and then map it to the field in the actual table. So then the data set will be changed, and you'll have the new messages.
Really, without any coding?
Just without any coding.
Just configuration?
Yes.
Well, that's cool.
And then once we have that, we need to have another one small setup. Now we have the endpoint where we want to connect, and now we know what's the message that we want, like the data set we want. Now we need to connect these two.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
When you want to add a new field, for example, and this field was created by an extension.
Yes, it's available in the data exchange.
That means that in this configuration mode, you just add a field from another extension.
Yes.
Wow.
So once you have that, we go to data synchronization list. In here for the GL accounts, we said, okay, for the table 15, chart of accounts, I need to use Azure Event Grid, and this is my endpoint. This is my subject for the message, and for the topic, destination, and the source, and the version of the message. The version of the message is simply because in the Event Grid, you can configure it that only this logic will apply for the message type version is 1.0. If it's 2.0, don't apply it. It only applies to that. So that means you're guaranteeing that whatever the application that works with 1.0 is not being will work even if you create a new version of that. And in here you specifically say that, okay, I want to use this data exchange definition to export the data set from Business Central. And those are the only setup that you need to add.
So with this configuration of versioning, actually you are avoiding breaking changes for
Yes.
other servers.
Already working applications, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's cool.
So if you can remember that we didn't get the RU version, the languages. Now, how much would it be easy to add RU to here? For that, I need to go to my Azure portal. So if you haven't used Azure portal before, you can simply create it free, which is, I think, give 1 month credit for $200, which is more than enough for you to play around. So I have a resource group for Tech Days 2019, and I have a bunch of resources in here. So first, I will show that before I go into the adding a Russian language, I would like to show that event grid. How much would it be easy to create an event grid? I go to search, I type event grid, and I'm clicking event grid topic, and I click add. It asks the name and location, that's it, and it will create, after a couple of seconds, it creates an event grid topic, and once it's created, it will look like this. That's it. This is the endpoint topic that I was talking about previously on the setup. And in the access keys, it generates the access keys, so you can store it in a Business Central, or you can use Azure Keyword for that. So that's the only setup that you need to do in to create the event grid.
So you need to create event grids by topics, right?
Yes, but still you can use a one event grid, and you can, in the subject level, you can send the different subjects.
Yeah.
That's what normally we do. We don't create like different event grids for different customers. We use one, and then use a subject to group the messages. That's much easier for us.
Do you know how they build? It's
They bill. It's quite cheap. For the first 1 million transactions, first 500,000 transactions, if I'm not mistaken, is free. After that, every 1 million transaction is $0.6.
$0.6.
Yes.
So it's.
You just avoid one coffee, and you're good to go with the event grid.
Do you know where is the coffee for 0.6?
That's a good question. Yes.
So, but I mean that it doesn't matter how much of this event grids do you have. So they are built by the messages.
Messages, yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's why you can group them depending on maybe your business cases. So it could be like a business areas or maybe systems where you can have only one event grid to manage. Okay.
So if I go to this is the logic app that we want to modify, which is do the translation. We already have logic app created to push the message to the Russian version, but we don't have a message that getting translated into the language we want. So we go to this is the translate message for the GL account, which is a logic app. So I go to this, edit, and I have a bunch of variables defined in here. And then before I go to that, I will show this. I have this array which says that these are the languages I want to add. Now I want to add Russia, but I don't know what's the language code that cognitive service use to represent the Russian language. So I go to Postman. I have the API call for this. I said, yes, get me the languages. So it brings back all the languages I need. So it says RU. So I need to add RU for my logic app. Now I know the language code. So I add that.
Oh, thank you. You placed it on the beginning. Oh.
Yeah, it's much easy because then it translates the first one. So I want to show the demo fast.
Respect that.
No other preference. That's it. Yeah. So I can still show that it doesn't have any chart of account in this version. So I go back to my master company. Now I save my logic app after adding the RU and go to chart of accounts. I select first 12, which is I published previously, and I said synchronize selected records, and yep. If I go to this, now I'll see that this is the first message, it's been pushed. Messages coming through. And if I go to the Russian version and press F5, I have it translated.
Let me check this.
Is the translation correct, Dmitry?
Well, not completely bullshit, but yeah. But yeah, we can live with that.
So for that, if it's not giving the exact same thing you want, you can train a model in the cognitive service. Yeah. This is like taking from the...
I'm joking. No, translation, by the way, yeah, not a bullshit, yeah.
Okay. So we have that. Now, it took me like a couple of seconds to add a new language. You can do this on any language that support. I think it's like any languages goes through. See, all these languages support cognitive service. So that means any place that you open a new company, it will be supported with cognitive service. So that's done. Now what I want to do is I want to add a new entity. In here we have entity synchronization built for customer, but we don't have anything for the vendors. Now the customer comes and says, we need the vendor synchronize as well. So how are we going to do that? For that, what I have to do is, I have to go to Logic App and check the customer, because those entities are like quite similar data sets. And I said I need to clone it. So I clone this, give a name, wait for a couple of seconds so it can validate the name, and I said yes, I need to create this one. It takes like a couple of 5 to 10 seconds to create the logic app that we have to wait. So this is to create the logic app for translations, which translate the things.
So we have already Event Grid?
Yes, we have already Event Grid, and now we want to translate the messages coming to the logic Event Grid to a different entity type, which is for the vendor. We have the logic app that translates the message that's coming for the customer type, but now we want to add the vendor entity.
Okay, so which means that, well, in our case, we want to translate, yeah?
Yes, but the first step is translate, then push it back to Event Grid. Then we have another logic app looking at the entity, and then grab that and push it to the environment.
And if we don't want to translate anything, then just to
put it to the Event Grid, and then it will take the message from there.
Okay, so even for the new entity, right? Okay.
So it's been created. So I go to that resource. I edit, add, and go to code. All I do is find customer, vendor, but I need to make sure that it's the caps. Replace all. I think I did everything correctly. Yep.
Don't worry. What happens in NAV TechDays will stay on YouTube. So.
Yes. I save this and I move to designer. It takes a couple of seconds. Yeah, now it's pointed to the vendor. And now the translation part is fine. Now I want to push this to the Russian language. So I take the logic app which pushed this message to the RU version, and then I clone this logic app as well for the vendors. This will be not this much easy in your real life because the data set will be different. For the demo purpose, we are using like exactly similar data set. That's why I'm not manipulating with the logic app scheme, the body. But in the real life scenario, that exactly real life scenario, you will have to spend a little bit more time to construct your body of the message. So.
Yeah, but still it's less time than you just need to create some AL code to deal with all the systems, right?
Yes. So in this logic app also, I'm going to find and replace. So I'm going to do the customer. Yep. I replace all. I go to designer. It takes a couple of seconds. And I said save. Yep. So it's all good. And if I go to my companies and we said purchasing, vendors, this is my New Zealand company, this is my DE, and this is my RU. So none of these companies have data for the vendors. Right now, if you notice that we only create this for the Russian language. So if I go to my master, My browser is, yep. And I said, okay, I need these two entities being pushed. Sorry. Should complete. So translate. You translate en. So yep, there you go. So the message has been transformed, translated, and push it to the Russian version. So all I did was clone that and change it a couple of places. That's it. So, but in the real life, as I mentioned earlier, it will be a little bit different, but you can work with that. So, thank you. I'll go back to the code. So, we built this extension. We have two extensions in the we built. One is to extract the data set and push it to the event grid. Other one is to map what are the entities that we need to extract the data out. So this is the event grid handler, one of the main code unit. It's, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very simple HTTP request. So we have a function that which creates the message or the body of the message that accept by the event grid. So we use this function to construct the message. We pass the variables and then it construct and post the message. So we have the content type and we take the access key, endpoint URL, and simply do a post call. That's all we need to do to connect Business Central to Azure Event Grid. But now the thing is, this option that I showed you is really good if you want to push the data once. But how it would work if you want to do it very constantly, like user changed something on the master company, now you want to automate that. You want to push it to the event grid without user clicking a button. For that, what we did was we extend the workflows, and with the workflows, what we did was that idea. Actually, I need to mention that it was idea from Lod, one of my colleagues who was sitting on the front row. He came up with the idea that why don't we extend the workflows and we connect workflows with the event grid. So by doing that, we get more configurable way of doing things. Like if a customer record changed, export the data set using data exchange definition, and then push it to event grid. Same way, any entity that's supported by Microsoft, we can have different filters, like do not put it to the event grid if this field is changed, only for this set of fields. Then we have more control over that. So we came up with the workflows.
Yeah, so did I understand correctly that, okay, we have, for example, customer record.
Yep.
And something was changed. We need to know about that this was changed, and then when we know that this was changed, we should send the message to event grid, right?
Yes.
So okay, so how we can know that something was changed? As I understand that we have, well, one example we can use like event subscriber, for example, on modify, on insert,
Yes.
on delete, and create an extension that will subscribe to this event and then send a message. Right? That's the one case. But in this case, we need to
Code it.
to code, right? So to add code for each record, for each table, for each event type, and you smart guys today, you proposed to use workflows that exist in Business
BC.
Central already. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the plan. So if I quickly go back. We have workflow here for customer names change. I only use for that. If a customer record is changed, the name is changed, then export the data exchange definition and push it to the event grid. So this is the configuration that we have in the workflow. And if you go to the customer and if I change anything, it will push the data set into event grid. So I'll take one of the customers from the New Zealand company. So this is the data set, and in the master company I just add one just to track the changes. So it's now changed to 1, and after a couple of seconds it should be in here.
I'm just wondering if
Yep, there we go, it's changed to 1.
I'm just wondering if, for example, well, you synchronize data from the, well, this change was synchronized with a legal entity, with a subsidiary company, right?
Yes.
And if somebody, for example, changed this record in a subsidiary company, and then this record was changed after in a holding company, and Event Grid will also update this?
Even right now the process is we override any changes that happened in the sub company. So right now the rule is the master data is handled in the main company.
Okay, so it will like replace the change made in subsidiary with a change made in a holding company.
Yes.
Right? Okay, and there are other examples. If, for example, somebody deleted this record, what will happen in a subsidiary company?
It will create that automatically.
It will create it.
Create it, yes.
Oh, that's crazy.
If it's not there, it will create it. If it's there, it will update it.
Really works?
It works.
I just wanted to be a bad policeman. Just don't leave me the chance.
So what we do is we will be putting this code in the GitHub, and if I go to this, I have the 2 repositories already been published, and we have 2 data sync and event handler, so you can look into this. And if you have any good ideas, you can more than welcome to create a pull request. And what we do is in here, we take the data set out through the data exchange definition and create a simple JSON file. And in the workflow response, we adding new events, which I used to like when event and the response, like when the customer record is changed, export the data set and create a data integration event entry. So that's the workflows. And we have code unit, which is for the JSON. In here, we use the JSON objects that in the Business Central. So we add the fields we want, and then create a buffer table, put all the fields into the data set into that, and use this. It will return us the JSON file, which is a JSON array. So we put it into the event, include in the event grid message, and publish it to the event grid, which works fine. What are the other demos?
Can I switch for my?
Yes. Go for it.
Are you guys interested to have also this demo that I showed you before about this BC Environments Manager? To have to use this? Yeah. I have this on my GitHub. It's just a private repository.
Oh, now you want to show GitHub because I showed my one.
Yeah, of course. I will just make it public. What's the name of that? A small demo about a GitHub. Okay. Okay. Now you also have this repository public. You can use it.
So shall I take
Yeah.
it back? And we go back to the slides, and if we have enough time, we'll come back to the code again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's the next slide. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, that's your part.
Yes, that's my part.
Yeah,
So this is the some question that Dmitry asked while I was preparing for the demos. How are we going to handle custom fields? Now we have the in logic app, we have specifically said that these are the fields. Now customer is changing fields quite frequently, and how are we going to handle it? The one way of doing is, this is something also idea from my colleague. We created an API which takes a JSON message, and with that we take the message type and also the entity type. Then we have the, oops, sorry, I'll go back, yes. We take that, and based on the message version and message type, we take which are the data exchange definition that we want to use. So message type comes at 2.0, and the customer, then we know that which workflow we need to trigger it. So then workflow triggers, and it says, okay, the message is 2.0, that means it has 3 fields. In the version 1.0, it only has 2 fields, so it knows how to read the JSON. It takes the data set, and then within the data exchange definition, you can have the processing code unit. So it runs the data process code unit, which will extract and push it to the actual table. So this is another way of handling the custom fields. Other option would be to modify the logic app and modify the data exchange definition by yourself, like every time customer do some changes.
If, for example, the custom field, well, you declare that you want to sync some custom field, but
Yes.
this custom field is not exist in other environment, what will happen?
So then what you can do is you can create different data exchange definitions on the subcompany and say that, okay, these fields are optional. So if the value is there, then it will trigger the validation triggers. Otherwise, it says, okay, I don't get this field, so I'll just ignore it and move on.
Oh, you have the answer for every my question.
So about the design considerations. Follow the event core concepts, which is like, do not have events like, when you're looking at the one event, you need to be able to understand what that event is about. If you can't understand, okay, this is a customer update and it contains all the information I have, and then if you have to look another event to complete another message to understand, then you are moving out of the logic of Event Grid. Event Grid is about taking a message which is individual and do not have any relationship with any other messages. The other thing is, you need to define event triggers. Like, since we have 100,000 executions free, it doesn't mean that you have to push all the messages into Event Grid. You need to understand what are the scenarios that I actually need this data set to be outside. And also, how much data is enough? Like, that's the one very most common question. Most of the time, what we used to do is we expose like 50 different fields, thinking that, okay, this might be needed in a future, so we'll expose that. And then the data set get bigger and bigger. So we need to understand that what's the data set that actually need for the customer. And since now we have a way of configuring it manually by the user, so we don't have to expose all the fields that in the table. And also, there's a limit in the Event Grid. The message should be in 64 kilobyte. In the preview, it was 1 1 MB, but when it's come to general available, it became 64 KB. So your message need to be in the 64 kilobytes. For some reason, if you can't fit your message to 64 KB, so can't we use Event Grid? No, you still can. For that, we have a pattern called claim check, which means you push the message to you can do different ways. The preferred way for me is we push the message into Azure function. Azure function takes that message, store in a blob storage, and then pass like a signature message, which is like a basic structure, saying that for this tenant, this ID for these customers being changed, and this is a token. If you want, you can go to this place and take the message. So Logic Cap will take that token, go to the Azure Blob Storage, and take the message from there. So we are not passing the huge message to the Event Grid. We are storing in somewhere, and then when it's needed, it's being handed over to the Logic Cap. This pattern only been needed if you have like a massive data set, which exceeds 64 KBs.
Well, 64 kilobytes is quite enough, I guess, for
yes,
some
because
normal
it's a
cases.
JSON.
Yeah.
It's more than enough. So
the takeaways. So yeah, that was amazing. Actually, I could take this one takeaway that that's Event Grid. It's wow.
it's really nice.
That's one takeaway. So, but in reality, well, you can use that in your real business scenarios, and if you have the need to sync data between different systems, well, in our case it was 2-3 more different business centrals, but in your case it could be a business central and maybe some other software for items, maybe some software for dealing with customers on whatever. So if you have, if you want to sync data, well, I guess it's the wonderful solution, which gives you this middle tier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that keep your business central working, keep your other systems working as well. Yeah. You want to show some more code, or we
can go to the Q&A.
Yeah.
Oh, I can go back to the code.
Well, we have at least two minutes. 2 minutes to show some code and then Q&A.
I'll open up my other.
We don't see your screen.
Yes, let me quickly open that.
Oh, okay. You have some secrets there.
Yes. For the data sync, my other extension, what I have is for each and every entity, I have a code unit, which actually go through the, which take the setups and call my other function, which is the which is in the other extension, which is create integration event entry, and it pass the entity and these parameters. So this is the code unit, and if you want to add like a new entity, what you need to do is you can copy paste this one and change the record like table IDs, and then you are good to go with that. So this code is like per entity. I'm happy to keep it is per entity. Mm-hmm. So copy paste it and give a new name for the vendors, and then you are good to go. And if you have any questions, you can always send it to me, and or email me, and then I will be able to help you. Need any information?
Should we use Event Grid to send you emails?
I can create a subscribe for that. Yes.
Just not to bother you on when you're using your time difference. How much, by the way, it's
12 hours.
12 hours.
Exactly 12 hours. Now it's 3 in the morning in New Zealand. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, why not you're sleeping, yeah? So we have, you want to continue?
No, that's fine.
Okay. We have like 10 minutes for Q&A. There were some short, okay.
T-shirts, yes.
T-shirts. Should we give them for the first 3?
Yes.
Or to the last 3?
First 3 would be fine, yes. Otherwise, no one will ask questions. They will wait for the last.
But they will stay.
Yes,
Okay. This is a microphone. It was push. Okay.
He was actually pulling from the middle, yes.
Okay.
How do you check in the target company if it should get data, or so do you use job queue, or it's waiting somehow?
Right now we do not have that setup like we configure it in a way that it always push. But you can create a setup in the middle saying that, okay, you can deactivate and activate it.
But do you also understand correctly that when when Event Grid push the messages to the subsidiary company, in our case, technically we use API,
Yes.
so URL, and so this is some published API. It could be custom API, or it could be base API. So in this case, if this is a custom API, you can actually control what's going on then, right?
Yes, and also what we can do is in the message that we push. I think I still have messages. Yes. In these messages, like one of the topics, we can specify that what are the tenants that you need to synchronize. So you pass that message into the Event Grid. And then Logic App knows what are the tenants actually need to be synced with. So you can extend a new field saying that these are the tenants that need to be synchronized. From there onwards, you can use that. The other option you can use is API management. From the API management, you can specify what are the URLs that you need to call. So from that, you can control that as well.
So Event Grid knows that it should send to Business Central using core of Event Grid. So no code on the target companies, target Business Central databases.
Yeah, because it's published API. So it could be, it sends the information to the published API. So it could be like a standard APIs, or if you want to synchronize data, I guess, if I'm wrong, and then if you want to synchronize some custom tables, you need to publish this on the subsidiary company also as a custom API, and then you can call this API.
Thank you.
No.
So now I'm pulling, right?
So any other questions?
Oh yeah, he has a mic.
Hi.
Hi.
This will be a two-parter because I want to elaborate on the question you just had. And do these messages work only real time? I mean, do they only push and that's it, and the message is gone? And in my scenario would be you assume that all your subsidiaries are listening. Yes. And are online.
Yes.
But we have a scenario where one goes offline for, let's say, an hour. All right, and the message was pushed, and is it gone, or?
No, it will retry up to 24 hours. So if your endpoint is down, Event Grid will try to send the message till 24 hours, and after 24 hours, it will push it to dead letter queue, just like the service bus does.
Okay, so the message will stay somewhere up there, so I can come up and read it again if I missed something?
No, it will. It's not, because it's not going to store. The Event Grid is, you can't come to Event Grid and say that, can I have the message? It's like Event Grid will try it. Mm-hmm. So till 24 hours, if the first attempt, if your system is down, it will wait for like 5 minutes. You can configure the how much the intervals are. It will wait for that, and it will go back to the system and say, okay, are you up? If it's up, it will hand over. So this will go till 24 hours. After the even 24 hours, it's not there, it will push it to data letter queue. So you can then manually say that push this to this endpoint.
Okay. The second part is the data exchange part, where you can add more fields, let's say to GL entries or customer, and
Yes.
you add a new field in the master data, and you will have 100 subsidiaries. So how do you synchronize the data exchange part in these subsidiaries?
Sorry, can you?
Well, data exchange, you have a field mapping.
Yes.
Yeah? The customer has 5 fields, name, address, and so on.
Yes.
Okay. You add a new field in the master data that you want to synchronize to subsidiaries.
Yes.
Do subsidiaries also use the data exchange
No.
part so they can map their fields?
In the subsidiaries, that's why I showed you 2 options. The option 1 is, I'll go back to my slide quickly.
Well, you had two questions, but I think it's fair enough to give you only one short.
It's okay.
So this is the second option. Like if the subsidiaries have different options, like if they want to map a field into different, they get the message, and message says that's customer name, but you want to map it to a different entity, different field, then you can go with this approach, which will go through the data exchange definition to import the data set into your company. But for the demo purpose, what we did was we create the custom APIs. So we export the data set and we push it to the custom APIs. So it's like a one-to-one mapping in the field level. But if you want to have more flexible option, then it's the better option would be to pass it to the data exchange definition, and then from there you can have to take it. So for that, every company should have their own data exchange definition in there.
And if the master data changes, in master data exchange definition changes, all the 100 and so on subsidiaries need to manually update them.
No, you can create indication for that as well. So any changes happen in the master company, you can update all the data exchange definitions in the subsidiary companies.
It's just a configuration. You can also sync configurations, right? So
Yeah.
why not?
And you use data exchange for that also.
Yeah.
Yes. Sure.
Anyway, I will try.
Sorry, one more, one here.
Oh, here. Okay.
Ah.
Can I ask you, if you're using BizTalk today with Navision 2017, the BizTalk server as the go between translation and subscribing, what did you call
BizTalk.
it? The
BizTalk, yes.
BizTalk, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Can you use this one with Navision 2017? And what is the benefit that is not available in the BizTalk server?
I guess.
Okay, you can use this with the 2017 because it's just calling a HTTP request. But for the BizTalk, you can, if I'm not mistaken, you can. But I need to come back to you on that because I haven't used BizTalk much. Yes, so I will come back to you. We'll talk after the session, and I can come back to you definitely on that. Yeah. I think he deserved it. Sure.
Yeah.
He asked a question that we can't answer.
Okay, I have a question too.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, but without
Without
Yeah, okay. Event Grid, what possibilities for logging do you have there? Because if I was part of the master company, I would like to know exact state of each sub-company. Are there any API for getting responses back for the handshaking of data that if it has reached the end finally, or? You
mean you want to know if the data was synchronized or not?
Yeah, exactly.
From the master company.
Yeah, that would be typically, that is what I see at customers where I do master data synchronization for.
You can trigger email or notification from the Event Grid, but from the Business Central, and then call the master company through that. But right now what we're trying to avoid is that, like getting the handshake, like, okay, did you receive the data set? That's the point of actually implementing the Event Grid. So if you try to wait for the message response, then the whole point of Event Grid will be gone. So for that, what I can suggest is, what you can do is, you can create another subscriber, which is in the Event Grid, which will give you the response that whether the message is being delivered or not. So then you can push it back to the master company.
Are there any logging available in Event
Yes,
Grid?
you have the logging.
Yeah.
You do have the login, but in order to do that, you have to log into the Azure Event Grid. but you can create a dashboard and you can
Yeah.
pull the data set out from there.
Yeah, as long as there's a subtable you might create in the master company to collect all these.
Information.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's option 2.
Okay.
So that's all I can.
Try. Okay.
Nice catch.
That's good, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So that's that, and yes, you have another question.
Yeah. Do we have time?
6 seconds.
Try.
In the scenario, do you hear me? Yeah. In the scenario, you translate all the field, I think, in the message using the translation tool on Azure.
Yes.
Is it? Can we imagine to have just a selection of? We can select which field are
Yes.
going to be translated.
Yes, I didn't actually translate all the fields. I only translate the name. I can quickly show you the logic app for that.
I guess that was the last question.
Let me.
So in fact, you choose
Oh, yeah. So,
in the.
so in here, that what I do is I take the data and create an array. So I specifically say that okay, I need to translate the name and some other fields. So I take that and create an array, because in the cognitive service, you can only translate one value. You can't pass a JSON message. So you have to be like text value you need to pass. So what I do is with the pipeline, I construct that one line, and then pass it to cognitive service, get a one response, and then split it to multiple based on the pipelines.
So you make the setup into the logic apps,
Yes.
not into BC.
Yes, because what we want to do is we want to give the responsibility for the person who is doing the integration. Right now, because the translation happened in the logic app, so he should make the decision on whether this message should be translated or not.
Yeah, but if you had a new field to be synchronized, you have to make the setup. The consultant can make a setup
Yes.
into the BC, but that you need someone else to
You need someone else to change. If you want to translate into different language, then you need someone else to modify the logic app there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, guys.